Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Hilda Sotelo. Welcome to my channel, Dr. Kósmica, and today we have a very special guest. And the theme of today will be Lotus in a Borderland, LGBTQ plus life through Buddhist lens. Their name is Frank Bruno, and he's going to be telling us a little bit about his life.
Right. So thank you for inviting me on the show, first of all. It's an honor to speak about my experience as an LGBTQ Buddhist practitioner. And specifically, I'm non-binary, trans non-binary. Born in the borderland, so I have a lot of experience here on the border. And it's quite a nice allegory for the Buddha Dharma, which we could probably get into later. But I've been practicing the Buddha Dharma for a few years now, maybe like 5, like doing a solid base of practice. And before then, probably 10 years of study.
Okay. So before we move on, tell us about the pronouns. You
Right.
go by
They,
them.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how long have you been practice and what Buddhist means to your daily life?
Right. So I've been practicing in earnest for about 5 years, thanks to a philosophy teacher I had who started off each session with a meditation. And I saw in that moment how kind of clear my mind would become when not being wrapped up in my thoughts, right? And so after that, I really took the steps to practice earnestly meditation, studying the sutras, and eventually reciting mantras and whatnot in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And what this means in daily life is I get to witness the world in a more enlightened way. And what that means is I'm not so wrapped up in what I personally think about the world, what I personally feel about it, what my projections are, but more so what's actually occurring in front of me, right? Mm. So just as an example, this water, right? I could call it my water. I could have a feeling about this water. It's like, ooh, I like how cold it is, things like this, right? And those are my ordinary way of thinking, which I'm still privy to. I'm not perfect. Mm-hmm. But the goal is to really, as I hold this water, I think about where it comes from, right? How it got to my hands, the way in which it makes my body feel as I drink it, mm-hmm. right? And all the causes and conditions that come about to make this water bottle what it is. Mm-hmm. And so it is with everyone and everything around me. Right? Because nothing is a neutral actor.
Yeah, and tell people out there, like, they want to come and practice Buddhism. Do they have to be Buddhist like for 20 years to come to this kind of conclusion? Or it can be someone that never practiced Buddhism, and then all of a sudden that person understand and be in the path of enlightenment kind of like magically. Let's put it this way. Okay,
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I feel like whether or not you're interested in practicing, have been practicing for a while, or don't even want to bother with the practice, I feel like a liberatory mindset is possible for everybody. Because interdependence is kind of like gravity, right? You don't have to believe in gravity for it to happen. You know,
Exactly.
So it's going to happen anyway. So it's possible for anybody.
Okay, now tell the difference between religion and Buddhist practice. Like, what's the main difference?
Right. So I guess there are religious aspects to Buddhist practice, you know, like ritual, like chanting and prayer, lighting incense, things like this, which we associate with religion. Mm-hmm. But there's also more philosophical aspects of how things are, how do they work? So more ontology, the ways in which things are, epistemology, the ways in which we know things, and practice. I think that's another differentiating factor where, you know, we meditate and that's fundamental. You know, we can know all of the philosophy, which is fantastic. Like, I love Buddhist philosophy. But that could only get you so far because it's a very experiential practice of bearing witness to our minds and what is occurring within them. And that aspect of practice, I think, is a big determining factor.
So it's getting to know your mind. That's the Buddhist philosophy. And then religion is a different, like you can go, you need to practice to subscribe and then attend every single Sunday and worship. But in Buddhism, we have that kind of like rituals as well. But the main goal will be
to understand our mind.
Understand our mind.
And to honor it as well.
Okay.
So when we light an incense, we're lighting it to our most enlightened nature rather than something out there, right?
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, so we are in the Pride Month. This month is June. And then why conversation about gender, sexuality are important, and spirituality are important nowadays?
Yeah, I feel like these conversations are really vital for today because we are in a fascist state that is enacting transgenocide as we speak, and always espouses homophobic clauses. And it's a really harrowing time, you know, for people like us who, you know, are outside of the spectrum of heteronormativity and neurotypicality, which I think go hand in hand in these conversations. And so, you know, just to defend ourselves, you know, to know that we're not going to be quiet during this time when the forces that be want us to be scared. They want us to be quiet. They want us to be silent, just to keep our voices up and be like, we've always existed before this state has existed, and we're always going to exist because we're a natural force of nature, right? Like, just not shutting up is why it's important.
So identifying yourself as non-binary, whether will be a political statement.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, what brought you to Buddhism? And then how Buddhism has changed your life during this past 5 years. You mentioned that you've been practicing for 5 years.
Right. And I initially got it through study about 10 years ago. So I wasn't in college at the time, and I was kind of meandering, doing a lot of data entry work, soul-killing stuff. And I was reading a lot of Western philosophy, especially like existentialism, so Nietzsche, Kierkegaard, things like this, Sartre. And what I was noticing about this practice of philosophy is, you know, they have a lot of answers. They draw us through a lot of arguments and have an answer. And then what do we do with that answer? That's a question, right? And then I read another philosopher and they have different arguments, different answers. And like philosophy as I had understood it at the time really wants to espouse a truth with a capital T, right? And, you know, I was like, okay, I kind of get it, but there's also nothing to practice. There's nothing to do with that truth. It's just kind of there. And then there's like no other, you know, ethic or, you know, framework of how you know, organize a society or interact with other people, things like this. And so I kind of got tired of it. And I was just, you know, kind of contemplating to myself, like, what did I have when I was younger, when I was slightly happier with myself? And a part of that was religion. Like I grew up Catholic and I was kind of really devout somehow. Like I think that's the past life karma coming into effect of really believing in something higher than myself or bigger than myself that I wanted to subject myself to, right? And that was like, I felt like that was lacking at the time. And so I was just in Barnes and Noble where I used to get all my books at the time and wandering down the spirituality section. And I noticed like a small book and like, just like it says The Way of the Bodhisattva by Shantideva. And I pick up the cover and it's a beautiful image of Guan Yin Bodhisattva, Bodhisattva of compassion on the cover. And I was just attracted to it. Like, I don't really have any sort of context as to why that is, other than it seemed attractive to me. And, I read through the book and I was really kind of amazed at what it was talking about. And then so that just led into a rabbit hole of studying the sutras until I started practicing and,
So you find the answers to yourself and you find the path to yourself by practicing Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
And then bottom line, the truth is within you.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So now tell us about what's the central teachings of Buddhism and what's suffering? What does it mean suffering? And how we can develop compassion.
Right. So the central teachings of Buddhism, and to circle back to how this has shifted the ways in which I understand myself and others, because I didn't really answer that part of the question.
Okay.
Really goes into the Buddha's central teachings. So the first turning of the wheel, as they call it, is the Four Noble Truths, which includes suffering, that we do suffer, right? That's the first one. That, suffering is kind of dramatic, but we could also have like an itch on our shoulder. We could be bored. We could be, too excited about something. All of these encompass dukkha, the Sanskrit word for suffering that we translate. The second of these truths is that there is a cause of our suffering, which is craving. That's what it's called in the original text, tanha, but it's more so craving for our own sake, right? Of being attached to our delusions and illusions about the world that drive a wedge between ourselves and others, between our minds and the way things are. The third of these truths is there's a way out. Mm-hmm. Good news. It's not all doom and gloom. So we don't have to be doomers in Buddhism. There is a way out. There is peace. There is nirvana. And fourth is there is a path. The Noble Eightfold Path is one of the ways in which we're able to have access to our more enlightened nature, which is already within us. And, I think just this teaching alone really shifted the ways in which I interpret other people, because I think it's really easy to be like, when we're in the midst of our own suffering, to be like, wow, no one understands me. I'm just alone in this little old world and it's so big and, but the more I contemplated that suffering is an aspect of life, the more empathy I had with other people, the more I'm able to see others and be like, wow, they're just like me. They also suffer.
Do we create suffering, or suffering is already there by itself and is one of the first steps to the path to enlightenment? What do you think?
Yeah, so one of our teachers that came in, Lama Dorje, put it really beautifully. Pain is natural, suffering is optional. Yeah. So pain is going to happen when we grow up, even if we have a more or less decent life. Even just growing up, we have growing pains. My knees hurt, my back hurts, things like this, right? And as we interact with each other, we're going to hurt each other, right? Because that's just nature. But we could take that pain and accept it and be like, okay, this is coming from a place of hurt from the other person, and I'm going to be patient, and I'm not going to throw wood on the fire and be overreactive. We could take that pain and react in that way, or we could just blow up on the other person and be like, wow, you hurt me. I don't want anything to do with you. You're a piece of crap or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And so, pain is natural, right? But we don't have to go that extra mile and make ourselves suffer because of it.
Okay. So how does Buddhism approach attachment and identity?
Right. Okay. So this goes into the next two turnings of the wheel, which are the central teachings of the Buddha. And so the second wheel is what is called emptiness, which shouldn't be confused as nihilism, people. It's not saying that nothing has a meaning, but that no thing has an essence onto itself. And so going back to the water, right? This water had to have come from somewhere, right? And that source also needs to have other causes and conditions for it to be what it is, right? So if it's a spring, there needs to have been an aquifer that has been filled up for however many years. There needs to have been a mountain that has formed. And those things just don't come out of nowhere, right? There's, for the mountain's case, millions of years of dirt and rocks piling up to make the mountain. For the water itself, it's made out of molecules and things like this, right? So we could always pick apart things, like if we investigate them to see, like, yeah, like what I'm witnessing as a bottle of water isn't what it is by itself. There's always a context surrounding the bottle of water that makes it what it is. And so that is emptiness, right? And that includes our own identities and attachments, right? That's not to say that they're not valid, that they don't have any reality, right? That's not what I'm saying. It's just, with whatever feeling that I'm having or whatever sort of stimulus I'm engaging with, I don't have to see it as how I've always seen it, right? My habitual way of seeing it. I could see it as, a confluence of causes and conditions, the ways in which I was brought up so that I think about this way, think about this in a certain way, or the actual physical stimulus that, like this comes from this and that and the other, right? So that I have that choice, right? That cognitive choice to behave in a different way, right? And yeah.
I mean, how do we, yes, no, very interesting, because how do we experience emptiness? Because, okay, let's say nowadays we want to pursue always pleasure and happiness. Of course, that's the end goal, no? All of us, we want to be happy, but we want to avoid pain and suffering. And then you brought us back and said, like, step number one, you got to acknowledge that there is pain and suffering, and then you need to get to know yourself, not as a selfish perspective, but getting to know the causes and conditions that put you into that stage. Okay? And then if you are in pain or sick, you go and see a doctor, and then you have the medicine. If the medicine works for you, and then they say in Buddhism, you have a good karma. If it doesn't work for you, meaning that you have a deeper lesson to learn and a different path to walk. Okay, now emptiness. Let's go back to emptiness.
Right.
Okay, so now we want to jump into emptiness, saying like, there is no effect of my actions. I don't care what I'm doing, because I don't believe in God. I don't believe in any kind of God, and I don't believe in punishment. But what Buddhism say about that? About you're facing consequences of your own actions? Is there a cause and effect, immediate? And then how do we see good people going around having all this like pain and suffering, and then bad people getting their way and getting their like now we have with our government and the politics? Like, how do we manage that feeling? And then in does Buddhism help people to navigate social conflict and polarization?
Right. That was a loaded question. Like I said at the beginning, this is not nihilism, where it's like, I don't have to care about my actions. I don't believe in some higher powers. I could do whatever I want. That's spiritual bypassing. I've used emptiness as that to avoid looking at myself and the consequences of my own actions. But another one of the Buddhist teachings is karma, cause and effect. And the cause and effect and emptiness go hand in hand. They cannot be separated, because interdependence functions on cause and effect. If you don't have cause and effect, then our stove can't turn on, right? When we want it to. It wouldn't be as predictable, right? And this also leads into the third teaching of the Buddha, the third turning of the wheel, which is Buddha nature. All of us, each and every one of us, even this table or this bottle of water, that's me being extremist about it, but everything has an enlightened nature to it already. It's just we have a temporary covering, just like this table. It has a tablecloth, right? But it's only there temporarily, and we could just take it off, right? And so if we do bear witness to the Buddha nature of people around us, then we'll be a little less likely to, to treat them like crap or to take advantage of them, right? But about the conflict and polarization, I think these teachings could really sort of get us out of the ways in which discourse is being led right now. It's so polarized, right? And it's like really assuming that if you pick one side, that's the only side that you should be on. And if you're on the other side, you're stupid, like you shouldn't deserve to live, or whatever extreme that you want to go to, right? And that just like kind of deletes nuance in conversations. And so I think, you know, having those three teachings in mind, that there is suffering, right? We all have an opportunity to get rid of it, that we're not just independent entities, but we grow up within a context, and that all of us have the opportunity to be liberated, will allow us to like not be sucked into that polarizing habit that's going on right now.
Yeah. And then how do we, like, how Buddhism view LGBTQ plus communities, especially nowadays that we've been targeted by the government and the policies, and how Buddhism recommend to approach our identities in our community. And then how do we talk to the man in the mirror, the female in the mirror, when we are so polarized, and then we hate so much what we're seeing and watching and hearing?
So I can only speak about the community that I'm in. I don't really have that much exposure to other Buddhist communities, but we're open. We're open to alternative identities. We're accepting of anybody that comes through our doors. It doesn't really matter who you are, you know. But that's only based off of the local community I'm in, right? But I know that there are different attitudes according to culture, and even the teachings themselves and how they interact with femininity specifically. Because like in the more Theravada tradition, the, I guess, OG tradition, femininity is really seen as like negative, right? It's like seen as like, wow, you have a womb? Disgusting, gross. And like the woman, like the body of a woman is seen more as like an object of disgust, you know? But in the later like Vajrayana traditions of like Tibet and India, you know, femininity is seen as divine, you know, and the ultimate state is seen as a masculine principle and feminine principle in union, which can't be separated. And if you can't separate them, they become one thing, right? And that's non-binariness, at least how I understand it, right? And, you know, even in the middle teachings, the Mahayana teachings, like it's always emphasized that all of these conventions they have placed no importance on the true state of reality. It's neither male nor is it female. It is what it is. It encompasses both without being any of them, right? And so...
what about the discussion in between? Like, I know we want to go beyond genders and then non-binary, and then we want to transcend the drama of the gender roles. But what about the discussion in between? Misogynistic perspective from Buddhist organizations and from like all kinds of organizations and institutions. So how do we deal with that discussion in Buddhism? And do you know any LGBTQ practitioners in Buddhism? And then how's your experience? And I want to tell you a little bit about it, like just like briefly, is dialogue. We always dialoguing, and no matter how left out I have felt as a woman, sometimes in the conversations, I always go into that principle of we are part of this drama that left and out women for centuries, and then we are under patriarchy. And then nowadays is imperative that we know about feminism, about gender roles, and then we bring that discussion into the table and acknowledging. How do we deal in that in the Buddhist perspective and in your experience?
That's a really big question again. Yeah, it's really difficult, isn't it? Yeah, this is where I sort of get a bit skeptical about dialogue sometimes. Because if you're working off of two different premises, this is where like what we call the relative truth is so important. Where if you already take something as true, it's going to be really difficult to extricate someone else out of that mindset, right? And so, that's where I get a bit skeptical about dialogue on a more like political sphere, right? Within a community, it makes a bit more sense because people, you could bring up like, yo, I'm feeling out of this conversation. This is playing into a bigger pattern. We could, work out some guidelines to affect change within our community. And I think that's beautiful, right? I think that's valid. And you have done that in the past. Yeah. So I really thank you for putting your foot out there. I guess like putting your foot down, I guess that's a phrase. And being like, yo, like, come on, like, really, like, let's bring more perspectives to the table. And I really appreciate that. But in terms of the collective or the political sphere that we're in, I'm skeptical about dialogue, unfortunately. But that this is a thing that Dzogchen Khyentse Rinpoche said at some point, which ties into what I'm about to say, which is, it sounds extreme, but nonviolence is not compassion. This is what he said.
Non-violence is non-compassion.
Yeah, which is kind of like radical because when you think about Buddhism from a normal perspective, you're really seeing like ahimsa, non-violence. We're not going to hurt anybody, we're going to take the beatings as we do. But that like contradicts what Buddhist practitioners have done in history, like the colonial period in Korea, the monks were really at arms with the Japanese imperialists. Same thing in Tibet. They were really engaging violently with the CCP, the Communist Party of China, right? And so I think as Western Buddhist practitioners, I think direct action, like to defend and to embody, a feminist ethic, trans identity, whatever it may be outside of the fascist regime is going to be a bit more effective because that's what will do the talking for us. Because what do the patriarchs and what do the capitalists care about is keeping status quo, number one, and capital. And so if we disrupt capital, if we disrupt the norm, then they'll be more privy to actually listening to us.
So tell us about compassion and how compassion has been, like the misunderstanding of compassion.
Right. Yeah. That plays into what I was just saying. Right. I see more compassion as empathy, and that's still kind of a lacking term, right? Where I'm able to see someone, like let's take, for example, I went out to like a club like a month or two ago, and there was these really like bigoted army guys there, like really like they're into Marxism, like are you stupid? Like that kind of thing, right? Like really beating down on like socialism and feminist ethics and things like this. And, it could be really easy, like within the polarized dynamic of being like, wow, these meatheads don't really know much. Like, I'm just going to pretend they don't exist or like hate them in the back of my mind. But at one point, one of them said like that they hate themselves, that they hate their life.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jesus, okay. like in order to hate others, you need to hate yourself, right? First and foremost. Yeah. Because there are aspects of yourself that you're going to project onto other people that you don't like. So for example, like, oh, I hate that I'm fat, right? Like I would tell me now, people have been telling me, oh, my face has gotten larger or something. I see the weight gain in your face or something. And if I internalize that and really hate it, what does that say about my attitude towards, fat people outside of me, right? And so it is with our attitudes, with everything, right? If you're espousing hate towards something, there's probably an aspect of yourself that you're identifying with that you're also hating. And so I think like that type of empathy is really important. And another aspect of it is acting compassionately, which doesn't look like what we think it does. So like what I was saying, like, oh, nonviolence, that's the Buddhist thing, right? Not necessarily, you know, if you let someone be violent to someone else, you're only going to allow that violence to perpetrate itself. Yeah. So you may need to get into the middle of that and perpetrate violence yourself so that you could teach the other person a lesson, right? That still doesn't mean that I've left my place of empathy, that I've left my place of compassion. You know, I'm going to beat you up so that you could learn something, not just because I hate you or not because I hate you, right? Those are like mutually exclusive phenomena, right?
Okay, so because I'm thinking like the compassion, okay, kindness and compassion. So what's the difference? And then being mindful towards like yourself and others. And then when you gonna have a compassionate act, meaning like you gotta make sure it doesn't come from your being you helping, and then you think you're helping, but you're not helping. You're just like being an obstacle to someone else's lesson during that specific moment. Right. So now let's talk about tell us about mindfulness, and then what challenge do you think the LGBTQ plus people face today? And then have you noticed any difference between the community is already like going beyond the gender expectations and the social norms in regards of mindfulness and compassion? So
yeah, I think mindfulness is key here, you know, because if we're not aware of what's going on in our own mind, it could be much easier to fall into those habits of, you know, dichotomizing, of victimizing, of perpetuating violence in an unskillful way, right? And so mindfulness is really, you know, it's sort of advertised as a practice in and of itself, but in the Tibetan tradition, it's really more of like recall, right? Of being able to remember what we're about, right? And, you know, if you're taking the Four Noble Truths as an object of mindfulness, like if you're remembering that people suffer, then maybe I won't be so pissed off when someone, you know, cuts me off in traffic, you know? And I think that's where the difference between kindness and niceness comes into play. This is something that a professor I worked with, emphasized really nicely, pun intended, where niceness is like that surface level, you know, palatability, I guess I'll say, where it's like, I'm like, if you ask me how my day is, I'm going to say that it's good.
Even though it's not good.
Right, because exactly.
Convenience.
Yeah. And if I see that you're doing something that's kind of annoying, I'm not going to say anything because you're enjoying it and that's a nice thing to do, right? But kindness, you know, is kind of not sugarcoating anything, not saying something just because you want to please people. And so if you ask me how my day is doing, I'm going to be like, well, it's not so great. You know, like I woke up with a headache and it's still going on and I got some bad news, you know, and that opens up vulnerability. You know, you open up the space for others to be vulnerable. And when someone is annoying you, for the other example, they're probably annoying someone else. Yeah. You know? So it's like, you could be like, hey, can you like cool your jets there?
Like a good role models for kindness, I think they're the middle school teachers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and any teacher, I think, will have to do that. Yes.
Okay. What older generations can learn from younger generations? Do we have any conflicts nowadays, or you think we are flowing just smooth and nice?
No, yeah,
this is a crisis.
No, this is where You know, this is some of the issues that LGBTQ people face today. Not just today, but I think across generations, where there's always been a resistance between the old guard, you know, and the new guard, right? Of people like myself. I'm not exactly a spring chicken anymore, but I'm still young, I think. Of being faced with paradigms and systems that don't acknowledge my existence. You know, and this is like a battle that I've had with my family, you know, where they were like, you know, non-binary, that's not true. Like, that's not real. Like, how can you be something that's not real? And it's like, okay, if you were to say, like, if we were to switch the example up of being like, yeah, I'm a Muslim practitioner, right? Like, I believe in the Quran, things like this. And if I go to my family and say this, they're gonna be like, "Oh, that's not real. You can't believe that." It's like, it's a real thing. Like, people practice Islam all across the world. You can't say it's not existent just because you don't believe in it. And so with our identities, right? The ways in which we frame our identities, I should say that, like, these are existent states of being. Like, these are ways of being that have always been in the world, even in prehistoric times, right? In Mesoamerica, in India, China, everywhere has had either like third genders or multiple genders. And so older generations need to say less.
Okay.
They need to not pretend that they know it all. Because there's no way that any of us could know it all.
Exactly.
That's a misconception about our philosophy nowadays, that there is a rationality that is inherently true. But no, there cannot be. Even Buddhist philosophy lets go of logic at some point, where it's like, you're just saying words, like, just live it out, you know?
So the way we pass it on information now is like radically, is a revolution nowadays. So like the previous generations, we need to be like, what, like kind of like pass it on the microphone, or stop, like not stay quiet. Obviously we need to speak more.
Of course,
like all generations and everybody needs to speak.
Yeah.
But like, not to have our strong opinions about something that we disagree on?
No,
is this what you're saying? Or
no, I think like you're going to have an opinion.
Respectful?
Yeah, but you're going to have an opinion. Just know that it doesn't have to be the opinion.
Exactly.
Because like the practice of mindfulness too forces us to be comfortable with being uncomfortable with ourselves. It forces us to be uncomfortable with being comfortable, you know, because we always have to face ourselves. It's like, am I being bigoted in some way? Am I being, you know, hateful in some way? We always have to ask that question. And when we catch ourselves, that's a point of discomfort, you know, where it's like, crap, I've fallen into the same habit again. And then so we're able to use that discomfort for something beneficial. Yeah. But that's not the way in which we've been conditioned to handle discomfort. It's to lash out, right? Where it's like, ooh, you're saying something uncomfortable. I'm going to like defeat you so that you don't exist anymore. But no, like like everyone's entitled to their opinion. But if that opinion involves like some of us not existing or denying our autonomy, then sorry, like we have to like make ourselves known, and we have to resist.
Now we're going into the closing questions, and then tell us about some misconceptions about Buddhism, some misconceptions about the LGBTQ plus communities, people, and then what book do you recommend, and what is it that is giving you hope right now in life? Okay.
Okay. Misconceptions about Buddhism. I think we touched on a few, right? Where when people hear life is suffering, it could be kind of a bummer, right? It's like, wow, that's how you really see the world? That's really sad. But no, that's not the only way the world exists, right? There's also a lot of joy and a lot of creativity that could sprout from the world. It's just that the premise hinges on what the cause of suffering is, which is our egocentric, self-centered attitudes and our misgivings about the world and other people. And misconceptions about queer folk. I think one of the major issues is that we're going to negatively affect children. And that doesn't track. If we see the track records of a lot of the people in power, they're the ones that mistreated children, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And we were some of the mistreated children. We didn't have the lexicon to really identify who we were. We didn't have the frameworks to be critical of the system in which we are grown in. We've been reared in, right? And so there's a lot of ways in which patriarchal society has failed children and continues to fail children, especially now with the advent of technology and how that's destroying literacy rates and attention spans. I think, if there's anyone that's grooming, it's those greater patriarchal forces. We just want to live free, man. Yeah. we just want to be who we want to be and not bother anybody. But it turns out that just being who you want to be bothers people. And so stop, okay? Just stop it. But what gives me hope is being in community, being amongst other queer folk, amongst other practitioners of liberation, whether it be political liberation or Buddhist liberation. They go hand in hand, I think. Thich Nhat Hanh is a really good example of this in the real world, right? Of imagining a different world to be in and living that imagined world. I think that's what we need more than ever, to not be so tied into the reality of patriarchal capitalism, late stage capitalism, which is overbearing, that wants us to be caught up in its reality, but to create alternative realities that we could already be living within. And being in community is a huge part of that. It's really big. And I'm drawing a blank on books, honestly. I think anything by Thich Nhat Hanh would be good. Particularly Awakening of the Heart, which compiles multiple sutras and details Thich Nhat Hanh's commentary on them. Is really beautiful because there are some aspects of political resistance that do arise in that book concerning the ways in which Vietnam was being subjugated that are really enriching for the Buddhist practice, because some other practitioners could skirt away from politics and be like, this doesn't concern us, but everything is political, and yeah, we need to reckon with that.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you very much for being on my channel. And
Madre Kósmica.
Madre Kósmica, exactly. We're going to talk about the Madre Kósmica next Sunday. And then where can we find you?
Yeah, so I have a class. I typically teach some classes at Chenrezig Tibetan Cultural Buddhist. What is it? CTBCC. Chenrezig Tibetan Buddhist Cultural Center.
And it's going to be written right over here, okay?
Yes.
We're going to type it in so you can see it.
It's a bit of a mouthful, but I teach classes there sometimes when others can't make it. And I'll be doing a Medicine Buddha meditation to focus on healing and living a more enlightened life. And I also have a YouTube channel, not a lot of videos yet, but it's Sherzang, based off of my Dharma name, Sherzang. And I also have an Instagram at Prajna Zangpo. So I'll give the links so that they could be listed.
Okay.
But yes, thank you so much for having me.
So you're going to have Medicine Buddha this coming Sunday, and then you teach classes every Sunday over there, Saturday.
Yeah, like it's a bit here and there because when someone can't make it, then I fill in.
Take classes from Bruno.
Yeah.
So he's very like fast learner. He's been in Buddhism for 5 years and he knows like a bunch of good knowledge with Buddhism, and he can give you some like tips and guidance out there for you to find yourself and understand others.
Yes.
Thank you.
Om